Hello and welcome to this new video. In this one I want to show you how I came up with this little percussion section here and how I choose the instruments, how I layer them together, and also a few important thoughts about the mixing process. So let's start with the percussion section here, and at first let's have a listen. So at first let me show you the libraries I used, and let's begin with the first track here. For this one I used DMG-2 from Velocity. I love this one. This is always a stable part in my template, where I don't have that many instruments, to be honest. But this one again is always a stable part in my template. So I use the Armageddon patch here, and this is the default patch. And with this one you have a whole variety of sounds here. And let me play you some of these. You have some big and low sounding drums here. Also some higher toms. Some snares. And also some sticks. I love this one, especially for sketching out some ideas right out of the box, because it sounds massive. So let's start with the first block here, and in case if you wonder why there are so many single blocks here, this is a part of my songwriting process where I create these single blocks so I can move them around. I can quickly duplicate, delete, copy and paste stuff just for sketching out some ideas right out of the box. So let's start with the first block here, and let's solo this so you can hear the Armageddon ensemble alone, and it sounds like this. And I used some of the lower sounding drums here, and I also doubled some of the stuff on the accents. And the first thing that sticks out is that the velocities are not always full on, but more on the accents here, on the 1. The signature is 3/4 by the way, and the tempo is 165 beats per minute. And this is very important that you have stronger accents on the 1. Of course, it always depends on the section of the song, on the signature, on the tempo of the song, what you want to achieve with this section. But for this section it's more, let's say, an intro-like section, and I want a more softer sound but also some strong accents on the 1. And I achieved this with some doubles here, or let's say some more instruments always on the 1 and more single instruments here on the other notes. And let's say we go full on with the velocities, and this would sound like this. And of course this is a total mess. So let's bring it back. So let's have a look at the second block here, and here you can clearly see that the velocities are much higher, but also here I have strong accents on the 1, and it sounds like this. And This of course results in a much more aggressive and heavier sound. Now let's have a look at the third section. It's almost the same as the second one, but here I introduced some of these sticks and they sound like this. So let's mute the drums for a second here, so you can hear the sticks alone. It's just a simple 8-note rhythm, and these higher percussion sounds, they really help to keep the rhythm more alive. And you have a great velocity here, a great variety of velocity, so you can go from really loud to really soft and quiet. So you have to find a nice balance to mix it in with the other drums. And in case if you wonder, I talked a lot about the velocities, but not that much about the humanization of the notes. And the reason for that is I am still in the songwriting process here. And I have my little blocks here. I can move them around, I can copy and paste them, I can cut them if I want. And if I would start to humanize the notes here, especially with the other libraries, it can be really a big mess, to be honest. And I don't want that in my songwriting process. But that doesn't mean that I don't humanize the notes at all. But I do this later in the process. When the songwriting is finished, then I go in and then I humanize the notes little bit. But with the velocity, I take care of this right from the beginning, because this is much more important for the overall sound, in my opinion. And with this method, you also have a lot more free space in your head, so you can concentrate more on the songwriting itself, and you can take care of the other stuff later. So let's have a quick look at the other instruments here. I have some low toms from Cerberus, and here some higher toms. And I used the lower toms more for static accents like this, and I used the higher toms more for faster accents like this. And here I have also higher velocities on this block. So let's have a listen at the higher toms here. And of course alone it sounds really boring. But these three instruments together, they sound like this. And when I remove these two, this is the Armageddon ensemble alone, and again together with the Cerberus instruments. And this is always a great way, because this is a good example, because DMG-2 from Velocity has a different sound than Audio Imperia's Cerberus. Cerberus always sounds more sharp, more aggressive, and really focused. And this is always a great way to do. Search for your libraries and try different patches and stack them on top of each other, because every library has a sound of their own, and you can achieve a really aggressive and big sound when you stack them on top of each other. So let's have a look at the remaining instruments here. On this block I have something interesting. This is the Pacific Percussion from Performance Samples, and the full library isn't out yet, but this is a free patch. There's also a bass drum, some tenor drums, some sticks and taikos included in the free library, so you can go to the Performance Samples website and download this for free. And as always with Performance Samples, these sound absolutely amazing. So I used the tom ensemble for another accent layer here, and they sound like this. And as you can hear, it's another totally different sound than the other two, but with this you can build step by step your epic percussion section. And together they sound like this. And as you can see here, I introduced the Pacific percussion later in the section here. And on this track I have just some cymbals here. These are from DMG-2, just some crash cymbals here. Nothing special. And that's it for the percussion section here. And now let's have a look at the hit section here. So I always divide my percussions into the standard percussion instruments here, the blue ones, and then I have my massive sounding hits. These are always the massive ones, the big ones, sometimes the booms or sub hits or very low sounding drums or percussions, and I always have these two separated. And here you see some wave files. These are from the Evenant Composer Master Tools here. You can see the library here. And it's a great toolbox. I love this library. And they have some textures, some booms, brams, drums, pings, risers, signatures, all you can imagine. And the cool thing is they sound great on their own, but you can always use these sounds and you can mangle them, you can process them. You can be really creative and make your own sounds with them because the source material is so great here. And I love this library. So let's have a listen to some of the hits here. Here I have the Evenant classic hits from the library and they sound like this. And here again I used these more for the static accents here. But on this section I have more of them, and this is to support the last percussion section here, so you have even more stronger accents here. And together with the other instruments. So when I mute these, you immediately lose some of these strong accents here. So let's bring them back. And there are these strong accents again. And here at the end I have some booms and some big toms, also from the Composer Master Tools from Evenant. And this is for an even more stronger accent, just for the very end here. So you have a really big combined aggressive sounding hit just for the end here. So now that we have talked about the libraries and the layering, let's talk about the processing a little bit, because that's also very important in my opinion when you stack these different libraries on top of each other. So here is my percussion group track here, but let's talk about this later. Let's focus more on the single instruments here. So here is my mixer with the single instruments. The blue ones are my percussion tracks here. And let's solo these. The Hue link is activated. And here is the processing. And at first, let's have a listen with the processing activated. And now without the processing. And again with the processing. So let's switch to a more heavier section here. And without the processing, it doesn't sound that aggressive anymore, right? It sounds more muffled, with way too much low end and low mids, and a little bit boomy, and overall a little bit dark and, let's say, cloudy. And the reason for that is almost always the low end and the low mids. They really add up when you stack these different libraries on top of each other. So you have to take care of this. So let's start with the Armageddon ensemble here. We talked about this library before. So let's open the channel. And the first thing is the fat filter EQ here. So let's solo this. And I turn this EQ on and off so you can hear the difference better. And as you can hear, it sounds much cleaner with the EQ activated. So I reduced some of the low end here at around 70, here at around 200. This is always a frequency you can reduce, but what I did, I did a little sweep here, like this. And then I search for annoying frequencies. But I don't do it like this, because this is really dangerous. With this method, then almost everything sounds annoying. So I do a little, let's say, a gentle sweep, and then I find some annoying frequencies really quickly. And here it's almost exactly at 200. Then I go to 0, I lower the Q filter a little bit, and here we can go a little bit more broad. And of course, when you overdo this, you lose a lot of the musical information. So at around -5, it sounds fine to me. And here again, some of the low mids at around 570. And here I add a little bell boost with a very broad Q filter, just to give the Armageddon ensemble a little bit more attack. So without this one. So with this one you have a little bit more attack. And the next thing is the SSL channel strip here. And here I did almost the same as with the fat filter EQ. I reduced some of the 500 here and a tiny boost at around 6K. And the reason for that is I love this channel strip, and it sounds different than the fat filter EQ, of course. It has different EQ curves. And I also add a little bit of compression, ratio 4:1, and just a little bit of gain reduction here. So the difference is not that big as with the fat filter EQ, but it adds another layer of clarity to the overall sound. And one thing I want to mention is I wouldn't do these EQ moves that much when I have the library alone on the track. I only do this with this amount when I layer different libraries together. So now let's have a quick look at the other instruments. And here I have Cerberus. With the low toms I did nothing here because they sound great on their own in my opinion. So let's have a quick listen. So they sound really sharp and focused. So I did nothing. And on the higher toms I just have the SSL channel strip here with just a 1 dB boost at around 7.5K, a tiny boost at around 2.5, and also I think the same amount of compression here. So the difference is very subtle here. The next thing is the Pacific percussion, the ensemble toms. And here I have also the fab filter EQ. Also reduce some of the low end and low mids and a little bit more high end here. And again, as you can hear, without the EQ it sounds very muffled. And also have the channel strip here with similar settings and as the other ones. But the difference is really small here. And on the cymbals, I think I did nothing, yes. And that's it for the processing of the single instruments. And on the hit, let's have a quick look. I think on the hits I did nothing because they sound great on their own. Now let's have a look at the percussion group here. So here again I have a fab filter EQ. And as you can hear, the same as before, it makes the overall sound more clear. And I have a low pass here to remove some of the super low end, because with all the different libraries, they really add up. And the same here with the low end at 120 and some of the low mids here. But it's a little bit different on the percussion group than on the single instruments. And I also have the channel strip here. And the same as before, just a few minor adjustments here. So the difference is again really small here. And that's it for the processing. And we also can have a look at the hits here. This is my group for the hits. And I also have an EQ, but there's nothing going on. We can add a little high pass here, let's say around 20 just for the hits. So let's have a listen at this one. So, and that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. If so, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and thank you very much for watching, and see you on the next one.